Now, most of us have heard the story by now about Jamal Khashoggi. Now, he was the dissident Saudi journalist who appears to have been murdered by the Saudi state. Essentially, he was an American citizen. He worked for the Washington Post. While he was in Turkey, he was called to the Saudi embassy. There was the last time anyone had seen him. It is highly believed by Turkish intelligence that the man was killed there, dismembered, and his body disposed of by agents who left the country the same day that the alleged killing took place. Now, it seems very likely that the killing actually was carried out, given the fact that nobody seems to be able to find this man. Now, this is a very complicated political situation, because on the one hand, you have the U.S., which is already in a row with Turkey, and the United States has always been a tremendous ally of Saudi Arabia. In other words, the U.S. is kind of caught in the middle because there's suspicion that the U.S. may have actually known this was going to happen and did not warn him. Also, there's a lot of media outrage over this as well. Essentially, what the U.S. has to do is try to placate the Saudis, in other words, not do anything to them for it, but for Turkey, they have to make it look like they were doing something. In the eyes of the international community, this is something that is unacceptable. This is something that they have to be held, the Saudis have to be held accountable for. Now, this has really burst out into the media. There's large denunciations by the media over this. This was going too far. This is something the Saudis, they're drawing some kind of red line here for the Saudis. Like, this is something they should never have attempted. This is something they should never have touched. However, they certainly seem to not have anything to say when it's the Yemenis that are being killed by Saudi Arabia. I mean, 10,000 of them have died as a result of the unjust war that has been declared on them, something that is essentially just a straight-out genocide. But the media is very quiet about that. But when it's one of their own, when it's a journalist who has been killed, now they're outraged. Of course, they should be outraged, but they should be outraged at the killing of innocent people as well, not relatively ignoring the situation as they have been for the last several years. Now, the pressure is on U.S. President Donald Trump to cut the weapons that have been sold to Saudi Arabia. Both people in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are calling for him to do so, and this is very strange. Usually you don't see this much outrage towards the Saudi coming from the mainstream U.S. political establishment. But here it is, right now, in front of everybody's face, both sides of the aisle, asking that the president do something about it. Now, Donald Trump has made it perfectly clear that he's not going to cease further shipments of weapons to Saudi Arabia, though they have a deal, the deal's in place, and that he wants that income for the United States, most of which goes to weapons manufacturers, but that's besides the point. So Donald Trump has made it very clear that he's not going to stop these weapon shipments, when that is the very least that should be done to Saudi Arabia for this outrage, and the other outrages that they have committed during the existence of their regime. Now, surprisingly, or maybe not surprising, depending on who you are, Canadian President Justin Trudeau, who has also sold weapons to the Saudis, says that they have an agreement in place and that he will continue to honor that agreement. In other words, even the government of Canada, which is known for being a little bit more liberal leaning on issues like this, mostly quiet with the Saudi genocide of Yemenis, but, raising their voices somewhat over the killing of a journalist, even they are still going to continue to sell weapons to Saudi Arabia. So much for that entrenched liberal establishment, that big difference that we were going to get from the conservatives who were in before. And all of this is very much a reflection of that relationship that exists between the United States and Saudi Arabia. Now, for a lot of people don't seem to really understand this. Believe it or not, the United States has allies in both Israel and Saudi Arabia. Now, many people, particularly those on the right, may not understand this, that Islam is the enemy, etc. But the thing is, in terms of carrying out U.S. interests inside the region, there has been no better allies of the United States than both Saudi Arabia and Israel, despite the fact that they are both religious extremist countries. Now, that's kind of the problem when you have a religious fundamentalist state. Oftentimes, the religious fundamentalist aspect of it is only a control mechanism. I sincerely doubt that Mohammed bin Salman really cares about the call of Islam. He doesn't care. This is a control mechanism. They have religious police in order to control the public. They themselves, the higher-ups, the Saudi royal family, the oil billionaires, they don't care. Islam doesn't mean anything to them. This is all about control for them. Now, when you come over to Israel, we see much of the same thing. Israel is very much a Zionist state. I am in no way saying that it's not. It is very much a Zionist state. But for them, the Zionism is more about keeping it a certain ethno-nationalist state and less about other measures. Well, they still want the Palestinians dead, don't get me wrong, but they also make it very clear that they only want white European Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, of which there is a great question as to whether or not they are even actually Jewish. So it's interesting. You have to understand the relationship that the United States has in the Middle East and has previously had with Turkey itself. The U.S. is kind of in the middle of a situation that is, at least superficially, an issue between Saudi Arabia and Turkey, because a citizen was allegedly, and I'm pretty sure he was, killed on Turkish soil by the Saudi government. And the U.S. kind of is in the middle of this, and they do have to deal with it. But what are they going to do? They know they have to placate the Saudis, but they also need to criticize them in this case, as you can't be doing this because it makes us look bad. But, can continue killing, 10,000 Yemenis because the U.S. government doesn't really care about that. So that's basically, a quick explanation of the whole situation there. It should be noted, I should have noted earlier, that this Jamal Khashoggi was very much a critic of the totalitarian rule inside of Saudi Arabia, and this, of course, if he was killed, which he very likely was, seems to be the most likely reason that he was killed. Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.